Jared Cannonier is such an interesting one for me. He really is. I met Cannonier one time. Maybe I should disclose it. I met him one time. And he was so pleasant and he was so nice to me that I've taken that with me. I was with him 3 to 5 minutes. But he was so pleasant to be around that I can't go anywhere and talk about Jared Cannonier and not be positive about him. And even the times where I give him tough love, it's tough love from a standpoint of me offering suggestions that I think would push his career even further. But if you told me that in the entertainment era where we live, if you told me you were going to have a multiple-time main eventer, Cannonier's last 3 fights have been main event. That's off the top of my head. I don't know what his one before that was. I go back to Izzy. I guess Cannonier's fight before that was with Brunson, and that was a co-main. So I am right. I go to Izzy, I go to Strickland, I go to Vettori. 3 times in a row, he's a main eventer. There are 738 athletes under contract with the Ultimate Fighting Championship right now. 30 of them, at a maximum, will become a main event. It's a very, very rare thing. And Cannonier did it against the best guys in the world once, twice, 3 times. Cannonier is getting better. What do you want to do with that? It's a big deal. It's a really big deal when you got a king of the division like Adesanya, right? Adesanya is not just the best fighter today. This is a generational fighter. There is no one from this era who is reasonably going to bring him down. That invokes rematches. And that lack of parity is a problem for business. But when you have a guy like Jared Cannonier and you understand that we're going to be doing rematches because everybody in the top 5's already fought the number 1 guy. Anyone in the top 5, which is all the matchmakers draw from, you won't find a number 6. You won't find a number 9. You go back and you look within the modern era. If you're going to fight for a title, you got to be somewhere in the number 5. You don't have to be the number 1 guy. You don't have to be the number 2 guy. But you do have to be in the top 5, and you're not going to find an exception to that. Now, that's a policy, that's not a rule, and it's one, like anything, we're going to have to get around. Because if we don't, we're going to continue to see Adesanya doing things that we've already seen Adesanya do. But now that we accept the fact that that is the way that it's going to be, when you look at Jared Cannonier and you realize he's better today than he was then, it's the most compelling thing you can ever have for a rematch. When an athlete demonstrates he is better now than he was then, that is the most compelling ingredient you can have for a rematch. You guys remember when Cormier did that? Cormier fought Jon Jones, and oh man, this is the one. This is the one. Daniel Cormier, Jon Jones. Daniel is the guy. Didn't go his way. Jon sat out, Daniel went to work. Beautiful matches with the late, great Anthony Johnson. Oh, just incredible performances. But now we know when Jon comes back, right, Jon got worse by not doing it. Daniel's clearly gotten better. So now when they come back and we can redo this match, now we're going to set things straight. I'm just sharing for you an example of a fight that was a rematch, but it had the ingredient that was necessary. The challenger is now better than he was the first time. And I'm just seeing that with Jared Cannonier. Jared Cannonier comes out of this fight. He doesn't say boo. He doesn't say boo if he has a mouthful of it. That bothers me. Now, over time, those things can work, right? Chuck Liddell is the example I always like to give. Chuck Liddell went on to be the most recognizable face in all of MMA. And he also went on to be the biggest star, the number 1 draw, the most dependable box office hit you could have was Chuck Liddell. That is all true. I just suggest for you that he threw 5 years away before he got to that point. I didn't see anything with the Chuck Liddell that was the world champion, that was doing the Iceman gimmick, that I don't know what this is to this day. But I don't see anything different with that star, with that must-see attraction than the previous 5 years. I didn't see anything different. But if you take that slow approach, there's a lot of honor in it. There's a lot of sportsmanship in it. And you did it your way. And you can definitely hold your head high. I just submit for you, it would be a little bit more helpful if we heard more from Jared Cannonier, particularly since he has such an interesting story. Jared Cannonier was a truck driver in Alaska. He was a heavyweight. He was an out-of-shape man, is why he weighed 240 plus pounds. He was out of shape because he was sitting all day. He was sitting all day because he was driving truck. That's a fascinating story. Who believed in him? Who would have possibly encouraged him? Who possibly would have seen a 240-pound truck driver with no experience and throwing an arm around him and say, hey, you got to get over to this martial arts gym. I really think you can be good, kid. Nobody. That's the answer. He did this all on his own. That's awesome. I just would encourage him to get out and tell that story. Now, with all of that said, Jared Cannonier has finally said something. He said it very politely, but I heard it, and I loved it. And all Cannonier said, this is after his big win against Marvin, which many people have called the greatest fight they've ever seen. And I do believe if that fight were in a sold-out arena, right, because there's something with the optics. That's true. It really does matter on the optics. Nothing has ever even been in contention for greatest fight ever that didn't happen either in UFC, Bellator, or One Championship, because it's something with the production. It looks a different way. You could have had 3 times the fight down at the local dog park, caught on your mother's iPhone. It will never even be in contention. But we agree, right? We agree with what I just said, of course. I say it even though obvious just to bring to your attention that the atmosphere matters, and I believe if Jared and Marvin did what they did in front of 15,000 screaming fans, the talk of it was one of the great fights ever probably goes away, and we just call it one of the great fights ever. That's what I think. Now, in the wake of all of that, you have Jared Cannonier say that he wants to fight Khamzat Chimaev. Wow. That's interesting. And it's interesting for so many reasons. First off, nobody wants to fight Khamzat Chimaev. You fight him when you have to fight him. Second, no middleweight is under obligation to mention Khamzat at all because he's yet to clarify that he is now a middleweight. We keep hearing these rumors, guys. We keep hearing these, but then we hear another rumor that we believe too, that they're in a discussion of a catch weight. And then remember his previous fight was at 178 pounds, and even if there's a backstory on how they got there, you start to realize that regardless of what the rumor about Chimaev, they so often turn out to not be true. So Jared Cannonier, who's now a top guy, 3 times main eventer, that's something Khamzat Chimaev cannot say. By the way, it's a really big deal. Has now said that he wants to fight the Wolf. Nobody's ever said those words. I've never heard those words. And one thing that Chimaev needs and that he makes sure that he finds is anger. He must be. Everybody's got their approach. Some guys, they like to be the favorite. Some guys like to be the underdog. Some guys like to bare their head for 30 days. Some guys like to be out there and doing media 30 minutes before the fight, right? That guys have a different approach. But Chimaev, for the perfect approach, if he could design it, will be against somebody he doesn't like. Somebody that he's got heat with. You're not going to get that with Jared. I can sit around and complain that he misses opportunities in the entertainment era all that I want. He's a 3-time main eventer. His next fight, should he draw Chimaev, is going to be a big, beautiful feature matchup. Not to mention, Chimaev appears to be, right, I'm going off of information that we have, and we're admitting that we've got limited information, but Chimaev appears to be sitting and waiting in a co-main spot on an October card that appears to be headlined by Islam versus Charles, even though 2 days ago, Charles went on his social media and says that he's fighting Conor. Like, okay, let's try to stay focused here. We've got Chimaev, and we thought he was fighting Paulo Acosta, but that got pulled. We wish to God in heaven above he's fighting Bo Nickel, but Bo's assigned somewhere else. We've got nobody for him. And all of a sudden, Jared Cannonier, 3-time main eventer, former #1 contender, says, I would like to fight him. That's interesting. That's awesome. Jared Cannonier deserves respect. He deserves appreciation. Guys, he doesn't seem like the kind of guy that's going to go out there and get it for himself, but we have a responsibility, right? And we have a voice. And for everything that Jared's done for us, and now for what he's asking and willing to go and do for us again, let's get behind him. Jared Cannonier versus Chimaev. pay-per-view, co-main, October. Who's with me?